All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham, Rachak Kodash. I want to give double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule well in grace and peace, to you elect around the four winds, believing and pushing this truth in all sincerity. May the blessing of election be upon your houses. This is your fellow servant, Rakaya from the GMS Orlando camp, coming at you with another impromptu lesson. And, just sitting here meditating on a few things through the Spirit. Wanting to strike while the iron's hot. Lord, when this is edifying unto your elect. I want to entitle this lesson, Comfort is an Addiction. Because coming out of the world, we've all grown accustomed to comfort. Staying out of the way of pain, things that make us uneasy. Speaking for myself first and foremost, of course. But we've all grown accustomed to being comfortable. That's something that the world teaches, is to stay away from pain, which in turn has caused a lot of spiritual and mental shortcomings. And it's caused an addiction to develop, but now through the Spirit of Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai, that addiction is being broken, all right, because the Lord is constantly putting us in predicaments and situations of uncomfortability to promote growth and life within our spirits. Because staying away from pain isn't how you grow. Not when you're trying to build muscle, not when you're trying to increase in understanding, not when you're trying to increase in mental fortitude, spiritual fortitude. Staying away from the pain doesn't promote growth. It hinders growth. Getting accustomed to comfort is really a hindrance to the Spirit, which is why the Lord is constantly putting us into predicaments of uncomfortability. This is something that you got to understand. For myself first and foremost, of course, it's something that you got to understand through the Spirit, why the Lord is doing what he's doing. All right, and the Lord is doing what he's doing, like it says in Romans the 8th chapter, for our good. He's doing these things for our good. He's putting us in certain trials and tribulations. He's given us the ministry, the body in itself. There are certain aspects about the ministry that are uncomfortable. There are certain aspects about the brotherhood that are uncomfortable. Teaching that are uncomfortable. All right? Certain aspects in our lives that are uncomfortable with the knowledge of this truth. And the reason why the Lord is putting us in these different uncomfortable positions constantly is so that our spiritual and mental, growth is facilitated. The Lord puts us in the way of the pain and gives us the Spirit to overcome it. To deal, just like Yahweh Shai. Just like our forefathers, the men that we read about, the Apostle Paul, King David, the Apostle Peter. The Lord puts us in the way of the pain. As a matter of fact, let me get that. Bear with me real quick. Excuse the wind. The Lord said this in John 17, and I'm going to start at verse 14. It says, I have given them thy word, and the world have hated them, because they are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. I pray not that thou shouldest take them out of the world, but that thou shouldest keep them from the evil. The Lord didn't pray to take us away from the pain, to take us away from these circumstances. The Lord prayed so that the evil will be kept from us, so that we will be given the Spirit to overcome, and endure and conquer, just like he did. That's why the Lord said this in Ecclesiasticus, or Sirach, chapter 2. And I'm going to get verse 1. The Lord puts us in the way of the pain to prove us. That's the whole purpose. Right now we're being proven, tried, refined. All right, and the Lord is doing that by putting us in predicaments of uncomfortability, by making us face the pain. Because growth is painful. And that's a lesson that we're learning every day. Growth is painful. It's a process. It's tedious. It's uncomfortable, but it's necessary. And it's also necessary when it comes to proving a friend. Matter of fact, let me get that too. Because right now, the Lord's men are being proven through the pain, through adversity. Now, this is Sirach or Ecclesiasticus chapter 6 and verse 7. If thou wouldest get a friend, prove him first, and be not hasty to credit him. For some man is a friend for his own occasion, and will not abide in the day of thy trouble. And there is a friend who, being turned to enmity and strife, will discover thy reproach. Again, some friend is a companion at the table, and will not continue in the day of thy affliction. It says, but in thy prosperity he will be as thyself, and will be bold over thy servants. If thou be brought low, he will be against thee, and will hide himself from thy face. And right now, we're all going through that proving process. The ministry is getting a whole lot more painful. The ministry is getting a whole lot more painful. That's because the Lord is requiring growth, and the Lord is proving his true brethren, his true friends, who's going to stick with him in prosperity and in adversity. Because adversity is coming. Adversity is already upon us. And we see a lot of men that are resorting back to the addiction of comfort. Shit is getting tough, and they're resorting back to that old addiction in the world, that addiction of comfort. We don't want to find ourselves like that. Not now. We're too far in. We're too far in, man. There's too much going on. The Lord has shown us too much. The Lord has shown us too much. And now it's time for us to stand on our square for Yahweh Bahasham Yahushai, because the Lord stood on his square for us. So it's time for us to reciprocate that love. But it says, my son, if thou come to serve the Lord, prepare thy soul for temptation. The Lord let us know off rip. You come to serve the Lord, prepare your soul for temptation. Prepare to go through uncomfortability. Prepare to be uncomfortable. Prepare for this to be a painful process. Because, each and every one of us is, got our own, perspective, journey, and the truth that affects us in a way that is supposed to affect us. The Lord is going to find something that affects you, that makes you uncomfortable. You're not just going to skate through. Not if you're a man of the Lord. The Lord is going to find something that's going to hurt you. You're going to find something that's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to force you to get out of your comfort zone. And it's going to force you to dwell in the Spirit. That's going to force you to trust in him. The Lord, he's going to find something. And if it hasn't happened for you yet, it will happen. Believe that. Believe that. But it's not something to fear. It's something to understand, because the Lord also said in verse 2, set thy heart aright and constantly endure. Make not haste in the time of trouble. Why? Cleave unto him and depart not away, that thou mayest be increased at thy last end. So the Lord said, hey, set your heart aright, constantly endure. All right, yeah, we're going to go through, these afflictions. We're going to go through these moments of uncomfortability. But as long as we cleave unto the Lord, we're going to be increased at our last end. Discomfort is temporary. The Lord always gives us pockets of peace in this truth, in this walk of ours as well. We receive comfort in the form of this word ultimately. Our spirits are comforted by the word. We go through afflictions. We go through moments of pain and uncomfortability. But it doesn't last forever. Eventually, the Lord offers up, and lifts up a standard, a way out, and then we enter into that little pocket of rest until the next trial. So the Lord said, cleave unto him and depart not away, that thou mayest be increased at that last end. Whatsoever is brought upon thee, take cheerfully, and be patient when thou art changed to a lower state. And taking things cheerfully is easier said than done. Excuse me. And it's not speaking about, you walking around Babylon with a Cheshire cat smile. Hey, I'm catching hell today, guys. None of that goofy shit. And it was just taking it cheerfully is taking it with a proper mindset, the proper perspective and understanding of why this is happening and why it's necessary. You know, looking at the latter end of the affliction, you know, rather than just being caught up in a moment of trial, you know, looking at why the Lord has this going on in your life, what the lesson is. But it says, for gold is tried in the fire, and acceptable men in the furnace of adversity. Believe in him, and he will help thee. Order thy way right and trust in him. You know, right now the Lord's gold, his precious jewels, are being tried in the fire. Right now the Lord's jewels are being forced out of their comfort zone. And there's many ways, you know, that we're being forced out of our comfort zone. You know, for most brothers are introverts. You know, you have some extroverted brothers. You know, a lot of extroverted brothers out there. But for the most part, a lot of brothers are introverts to themselves, lone wolves as it is. You know, coming into the ministry, you can't be a lone wolf. You can't be introverted, especially if you're in a position of leadership. You have to have tough conversations. You know, you have to put yourself out there. You have to set a standard. You can't just dwell in your comfort zone. You know, the Lord will force you out of that real quick. A lot of brothers aren't used to talking a lot. You know, a lot of brothers aren't used to having other men over them, you know, order, you know, father figures, you know, men to look to for an example. For some brothers, that's uncomfortable. You know, but we're all being forced out of that comfort zone and being forced to exhibit the fruits of the Spirit, because it's not about us and what we want. It's not about being comfortable. It's about what needs to be done. It's about what the Lord is doing within us and where he needs us and wants us to be. That's what it's about. You know? But I had this pulled up on ChatGPT. I just wanted to read a few of these bullet points. I typed in list of cons of excuse me. I typed in list of cons of addiction. It says addiction can affect nearly every part of a person's life. Some of the biggest downsides include, and now the reason why I got this is because some of these symptoms, you know, or cons have spiritual ties. Excuse me, it's starting to rain. It says one of them, it says a loss of control, needing more of something over time and struggling to stop even when you want to. You know, an addiction to comfort can lead to a loss of control in the spirit. You know, if you're too addicted to comforting your flesh, you know, you won't adhere, you know, to the fruits of the Spirit. You won't exude that temperance that the Lord is requiring of us as we strive for the mastery. Let me get that in 1 Corinthians chapter 9. I'm going to start at verse 24. It says, now ye know ye not, Salakia, that they which run in a race run all, but one receiveth the prize. So run that ye may obtain. And every man that striveth for the mastery is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a corruptible crown, but we an incorruptible. All right, and the Lord told us that as we strive for the mastery, as we strive for this incorruptible crown, all right, we must be temperate in all things. And that word temperate in the blue letter, Strong's G1467, in Kratyo Ami, it says to be self-controlled, to be content, to exhibit self-government. All right, and an addiction to comfort won't allow us to exhibit self-government. Because an addiction to comfort leads to the loss of control. You know, you let your flesh take over rather than letting the Spirit take over. Your flesh starts to dictate your judgment, your understanding, you know, and the way that you conduct yourself. It completely blows temperance out of the water. And the Lord said, as we strive for the mastery, we need to be tempered in all things, especially now, more so than ever. You know, we're in that time where the Lord is requiring of us to rule over our spirits and to exemplify understanding and discernment in our actions. Basically, to tighten up, you know. Going back to the bullet points, it says health problems, which, you know, an addiction to comfort can cause health problems. You know, it says mental exhaustion, constant cravings, guilt, stress, mood swings, and emotional instability. And that's something that an addiction to comfort definitely causes. Mental exhaustion, that guilt, you know, constant cravings for, you know, for the flesh. So stress, mood swings, emotional instability. Like Isaiah 33:6 says, wisdom and knowledge is the stability of our times and strength of salvation. The fear of the Lord is our treasure. But that's only toward a man that is spiritually temperate. You know, a man that is dwelling outside of his comfort zone. You know, that's going through the pain, that's going through uncomfortability. You know, that's striving for the mastery. Otherwise, you know, that emotional instability is going to hit. And we see a lot of men making very emotional decisions in these latter days. Because something doesn't, you know, appease their flesh. They don't like certain things. You know, they don't like the way the Lord is doing certain things. You know, and that emotional instability creeps in. It says reduced motivation, broken relationships, poor decision making, time loss, dependence, feeling like you need something to feel normal. You know, feeling like you need the comfort of the world to feel normal. You know, it says reduced motivation. You know, the loss of motivation. You just don't want to do nothing. You know, you don't want to go to camp. You don't want to do videos. You know, you don't want to fellowship. You know, you comfortable where you at. You know, you got your family. You got, you know, your job. Whatever the case may be in the world. You know, you're comfortable to a sense where the work becomes a burden. Serving the Lord becomes a burden. It's an afterthought in a sense. It says poor decision making. You know, and we can go on forever. You know, impact on others. You know, and having an addiction to comfort can have an impact on the men around you. You know, right now we're fighting a battle. It says in 2 Timothy, the 3rd chapter, that no man that warreth entangleth himself with the affairs of this life. Right now, we're all fighting a battle. We're all on the front lines. And we need each and every man to be just as sharp as the next man. You worrying about, that's why it was a law. If a man was just married, his ass got to sit home. Because his mind going to be on everything but the war, but the battle, but what's taking place in front of us. And right now, it's no time for that. Right now, it's no time, you know, to have an addiction to comfort. Right now is the time to be embracing that uncomfortability, because it's all working toward our good. Like it says in Romans, the 8th chapter, man. Everything is working toward our good. Everything. It's time to embrace uncomfortability. Learn to love it. Because this is how the Lord is working and supping with us, man. No, but with that being said, that's really all I had. You know, the point was made. Lord wouldn't set a finance you elect. Right. Matter of fact, let me get this last one. Let me get this in 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 8. And I do bring out the same precepts damn near every video. But that's something that I learned from my elder, you know, Malcolm, the elder Malcolm in Chicago. The milk is far more deadly than cancer. Far more deadly than cancer. I've learned that from the elders apostles, starting with the elder apostle Tahar on down. It's constantly deeper understanding behind milk precepts. And the understanding is starting to unravel and unfold itself and starting to manifest as the days go by. You know, the deeper meaning behind certain things, certain founding scriptures. But that's another lesson for another time. It says, be sober, be vigilant, 1 Peter 5:8. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. And the devil is going to devour all those who have an addiction to comfort. The men that are addicted to appeasing the flesh, that's who the devil is going to devour. That's who he's looking for. The men who are comfortable. Like Gideon, the account of Gideon, when the Lord told him to take his men to the river so that they can drink. You had some men that were drinking and staying vigilant, and you had some that were drinking with no care in the world. Like they weren't getting ready to fight a battle. That's who Satan is looking for, and that's who Satan is catching up. But through the Spirit and power of Yahweh Shah, the Lord is teaching us to stay on our square, to stay on our P's and Q's spiritually, and to stay sober and stay vigilant. With that being said, that's all I have, Lord. When this is edifying unto you elect, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai, Bahasham, Rakakodash, and double honors to our apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who grew well. Grace and peace to you elect. Shalom.